In the heart of the Amazon jungle, the canopy was so thick it blocked out nearly all sunlight, casting the forest floor into a shadowed realm that felt ancient and unknowable. Here, tangled vines looped down like twisted fingers, grasping blindly at anyone daring enough to enter. And it was into this very heart of darkness that Dan, a thrill-seeking YouTuber, ventured, armed with nothing but a camera, a survival knife, and a fool's confidence. "Alright, folks," Dan whispered into the lens, eyes wide with excitement, "we're out here where locals say people go missing. Strange lights in the sky. But tonight, I'm finding out what's really here." As Dan pushed further, night began to cloak the forest in a darkness so complete it seemed to devour light itself. The air was thick and stifling, clinging to his skin, every breath tainted with the scent of damp earth and decay. Mosquitoes swarmed relentlessly, biting through his clothes despite the repellent he'd slathered on. Thick, vine-laden trees jutted toward the sky, their branches tangled together like the claws of creatures fighting for space in this oppressive wilderness. Dan was no stranger to dangerous places. As a YouTuber chasing mysteries, he'd ventured through haunted forests, abandoned ruins, even caverns. But this time, he'd come alone. He was here because of whispers, stories from the villagers who swore that strange lights and guttural sounds filled these depths, that travelers vanished without a trace, their bodies sometimes found in terrifying states. He'd laughed off the warnings, figuring them to be superstitions. But as he moved deeper, those warnings began to echo in his mind. The trees grew denser, their branches seeming to twist toward him, and each step felt heavier, as though the jungle itself resisted his presence. Strange sounds echoed around him, the snap of a branch, the distant hum of an unknown creature, even, he thought, the sound of footsteps mirroring his own. But the plants unnerved him the most. The flora grew stranger as he pressed on, glistening with an unnatural sheen under his light, as if coated in some kind of insectal exoskeleton. Bulbous plants with blood-red tips seemed to sway when he wasn't looking, their root systems appearing to pulse like veins. At one point, he tripped over a thick, throbbing vine, which tightened around his ankle before releasing him with a sickening, sentient shudder. "God, this place is alive," he muttered into his camera, forcing a laugh to hide his fear. Hours wore on, exhaustion weighing on his limbs, every step feeling like he was moving through water. Nearly ready to give up, he saw something lying on a flat stone between two charred-looking trees. It was a jaguar once, though now twisted almost beyond recognition. Its limbs jutted out at impossible angles, its chest torn open to expose ribs slick with dark, pulsing veins. Worst of all was its face. Embedded in its skull were human-like eyes, wide and empty, staring up at him as if frozen mid-scream. Dan's stomach twisted as he backed away, but he forced himself to keep recording, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what I'm looking at. This isn't natural." He swallowed, choking on the horror of it all. Then came the silence. The jungle, alive with the hum of insects and night birds, fell utterly still. Only his quickening breaths and pounding heart broke the silence. The certainty that he was lost struck him hard as he looked around, the trees and shadows seeming to close in. He stumbled, panic bubbling to the surface. The jungle seemed to warp, guiding him deeper into its depths. The thick canopy blocked out the moonlight, plunging him into absolute darkness. He pushed forward, time slipping from his grasp, until he stumbled upon it, half buried in the earth, wrapped in pulsing vines. The ship. It was massive, its surface sleek yet strangely organic, reflecting his headlamp in eerie colors, purple, green, and silver that shifted as he moved. Vines snaked around the hull, breathing, alive. It looked as though it had been here for eons, fallen from some distant place, and he felt it calling to him. Cautiously, he stepped toward it, every instinct screaming at him to turn back. He recorded everything, his camera capturing the strange, pulsing entrances, smooth and almost liquid as he passed through. Inside, the air turned sharply cold, the humid staleness replaced by a sterile chill. His footsteps echoed on the metallic floors, each one amplified in the silence. The walls were covered with symbols, twisted hieroglyphs that glowed faintly with an eerie green light. The corridor opened into a large chamber lined with transparent pods, each filled with creatures suspended in a viscous fluid. Dan's breath hitched as he approached one pod. Inside floated a creature with the body of a sloth but elongated, skeletal fingers that ended in talons. Its face was that of a howler monkey, twisted in agony. Another pod held a panther, but its eyes were too large, dark and empty. Each creature was a grotesque blend of species, contorted as if an alien hand had tried to play God. "Experiments," he murmured, voice trembling. They've been conducting experiments." He moved from pod to pod, each one holding a new horror, a macaw with lizard-like scales across its wings, a snake with human-like teeth, insects with bloated eyes that seemed to follow him. The sight made his skin crawl. Finally, he stumbled into what seemed to be the control room. The walls were lined with panels covered in symbols, their screens dark and dusted with an unfamiliar mold. Instinctively, he brushed his hand across a panel, and suddenly, the ship lit up. A high-pitched hum filled the air, and before him appeared a holographic map of the Amazon jungle, with trails and coordinates. Relief washed over him. He entered the coordinates into his watch, heart racing. As he turned to leave, he noticed a red light blinking on one of the panels, a small, pulsing light that hadn't been active before. A signal was being sent out. Dread pooled in his stomach. He didn't know who, or what, this signal would reach, but a primal part of him knew it was not meant for Earth. He fled the ship, crashing through the jungle, barely mindful of the strange plants and eerie animals that seemed to follow him. He ran until the first light of dawn broke, his heart pounding as he finally stumbled out of the jungle. Desperate to share his story, he uploaded the footage. The video spread like wildfire, captivating the public's imagination. But as his fame grew, strange things began happening. The video vanished from devices, screens froze, files corrupted, videos inexplicably erased. Some who had watched it reported strange occurrences, phone malfunctions, distorted sounds at night, and sightings of eerie lights hovering outside their homes. Dan, increasingly paranoid, tried everything to keep his footage online, but each attempt failed. Soon, people began dismissing the story as a hoax, his name a punchline in the online community. Still, Dan knew the truth. Haunted by nightmares of the creatures and hollow eyes that stared through him, he grew restless, convinced he was being watched. Every so often, in the dead silence of early morning, he would hear it, the faint, high-pitched whine echoing in his mind, like the signal from the alien ship, calling out to something far beyond Earth. And each time, he felt it inching closer, creeping into his life, as if the aliens themselves had returned, drawn to him like a beacon in the dark, waiting to finish what they had begun. And that's where Dan's story ends, at least for now. A simple quest to uncover the mysteries of the Amazon jungle left him with secrets far darker than he could have imagined. But the question remains: was he simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, or was he chosen by something from beyond our world? If you enjoyed this dive into the unknown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. The world is filled with more mysteries than we could ever imagine, and I'll be here to explore every dark corner. And one last thing. If you see strange lights outside your window tonight, maybe, just maybe, it's already too late. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.